SIVGA Peng, price at almost 500 US dollar, to be specific, 495 US dollar. This is without doubt the most premium wood headphone which I have tried so far from SIVGA. And let's just have a look at the build and the construction itself. As reflected by the price, it is premium build. It comes with this very nice carrying case here, which looks like leather to me, artificial leather probably, okay? At which inside you're gonna find, of course, the headphone itself, which is, by the way, kind of a bit normal with the weight, not too heavy, despite being made of steel headband here, which is very comfortable. Let me just show you. Okay, this is how I'm wearing it. And this is how it looked like once worn, without the cable, of course. And looking at the ear pads here, now this is very interesting. This is the first time that I'm seeing something like this from SIVGA, something which I would consider as very ergonomically well designed. It is contoured in such a way that to reflect on the shape of your head or my head. But there's a caveat to it also. It depends on what kind of head that you have. So in this case, I am so very lucky because once worn like this, I can feel that it is following or conform to the shape of my head and my ear. And the best part is that if you are wearing glasses like me, same like this, you notice here, it has this some sort of cavity which will allow the glass to a bit more graceful to blend in. So I would not be having any kind of pressure being placed on my glasses here. And looking at the front here, which is a wood construction. The most interesting thing that I observe on this SIVGA Peng is that at the top here, there's some sort of air vent, because this is closed back, 50 mm closed back headphone, by the way. And this thing indicate that there's supposed to be a movement of air inside or even outside. So which means that there's an effect to it, which I will talk a bit more later. Being closed back means that it does offer some sort of minimal ceiling, meaning to say that people around me will not be hearing what kind of music I'm listening to, and fair amount of noise suppression, not so much, not like ANC headphone, from coming in. And at top here, leather headband. It comes with this cable here, which seems to be very long, almost 2 meters, by the way. And it also comes with this 4.4 mm balance termination permanently. So there's no modular option here, because this is normally how headphones are. They are terminated permanently. But the good part is that at the very least, they also include this adapter here, which you can easily slide in like that, so that you can connect to 3.5 mm single-ended termination. This is very important. Rated at 340 ohm of impedance and 102 dB of sensitivity. It is already an indication that this thing would require power to run properly. And in fact, I have measured using my own multimeter. It is in fact higher than 340 ohm. It is more like 360 ohm. So it is definitely more demanding than this headphone of mine, which is Sennheiser HD 600 300 ohm. So driving it is very important for this headphone, because when I try it, even with my 710 milliwatt of power from this Hibi R8 Mark II, I was able to use it. I am getting the kind of sound which I would consider as usable, wholesome, fairly wholesome. But when I switch it to something which is a lot more powerful, up to 3000 or over 3000 milliwatt of power from my Burson Audio Playmat 3 here, then wow, such a difference, because we are talking about at least, by my estimation, at around 30% or even 40% of difference in the sound, the gap of the performance itself. Because what I notice is that the transient response, the way it flows with the sound itself, and the extension seems to be finally showing itself, revealing itself properly. To get 100% performance from this SIVGA Peng, you need to feed power to it. At the very minimum, I think at around perhaps 1000 milliwatt of power, at which you're going to get 90%. But only above 2000 milliwatt of power, then you're going to get 100%. And of course, on top of it, then you're going to hear the kind of soundstage and spatial imaging, which is more like a open back headphone rather than closed back. So just remember this. SIVGA Peng would require power. And of course, on top of it, the synergy seems to be quite consistent, regardless of what type of deck and amp which I can attach it to. Even though, let's say, running on this Hy-B R8, which is Darwin MPA, by the way, and running on this ESS Saber of Burson Audio Playmate 3, I am getting consistent sort of sound signature, meaning to say that, when it comes to pairing partner, the 50mm dynamic driver inside here would always retain the original sound signature. It does not impart that much of differences depending on different sources. How about the sound itself? Okay, I'll try to make this as concise and as simple as possible. You see here, many of you would have already known that I am a big fan of Sennheiser HD 600. And I am also a big fan of Sennheiser HD 650. Simply put, when I listen to this SIVGA Peng, I would actually place this SIVGA Peng somewhere in the middle, the bridge between HD 600 and HD 650. So meaning to say that the tuning of this SIVGA Peng is fairly linear, neutral-ish, and I say ish because I do feel that there's some coloration, which I will mention a bit more like after this. And of course, it offers the kind of transparency, the kind of technical performance, which is on par to just slightly better than Sennheiser HD 600 actually. Because I do hear that it was able to render better layering and separation, better imaging, and even, let's say, better soundstage. Would you believe it? Better soundstage as compared to the Sennheiser HD 600. By the way, again, let me repeat my favorite. This is an open back headphone, but this thing suffer from narrow soundstage. But this one, when powered properly, the keyword here, powered properly, actually sounds wider than this. Now, that is like really crazy, right? And of course, it has the kind of tonality and timbre, which is natural, organic. I do not hear any kind of, let's say, this metallic tint to the tonality and the timbre itself. I am quite happy with the kind of result that I'm getting, especially even from my Burson Audio Playmate 3, which tend to be very technical sounding if I connect it to something which is, already technical sounding. But this one is very well balanced, being musical and technical at the same time. And I think the most important part is that the biggest factor, other than being comfortable, other than being highly scalable, more power, it is very versatile. I was actually able to use this for monitoring or even mixing on my MacBook Pro here when doing music or audio, because I can actually depend on the transparency offered by this SIVGA Peng. But the key thing is that being versatile, it is also suitable for any type of music, anything from classical to rock and metal music. The upper frequency is super smooth. And again, like I mentioned earlier, remember this, once powered properly, you're also going to hear proper amount of extension in the upper frequency to the furthermost region, befitting the price it is asking. But of course, you're not going to get that kind of upper frequency performance if you are not powering up properly. And it does not appear to be sizzling, it does not appear to be offensive. There's no peakiness in the upper mid-range all the way to the upper frequency. It is natural as it is very airy sounding. And the mid-range, it is more like a transparent kind of approach. There's no coloration that I can think of. Male or female vocal or instrument sounds realistic to me. And the lower frequency, I will admit that it does seem to focus a bit more on the mid-bass rather than the sub-bass, but it does not mean that the sub-bass is roll-off. I am hearing pretty much something which is, the keyword here is being balanced, just that it is focused a bit more on the mid-bass. And this is where the coloration comes into play, because if I were to compare this with this is truthfully flat and linear when it comes to lower frequency, the mid-bass all the way to sub-bass. In fact, this is outright roll-off when it comes to sub-bass. But this one does emphasize a bit on the mid-bass, so which means that SIVGA Peng is neutral-ish, but a bit more exciting sounding, a bit more vibrant. The pace, the rhythm, the timing, the dynamic transient is pretty much almost as fast as a magnetic planar, right? Perhaps Hafaman Sundara. So all in all, I would say that SIVGA Peng is an impressive headphone from SIVGA, because they have put quite a lot of effort to tune it in such a way that it becomes so very balanced. Anything from the wear factor, the build factor, the sound factor, and the flexibility and the, what's the word? The ability to adapt for any kind of usage case scenario. And it is still closed back but sounding like open back headphone. Thank you so very much for watching the video until the end. Without skipping, I hope. Now click like and subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram under the name of Andy AV. And also, if you'd like to support me directly, you can join the membership below for behind the scene, especially for AAV Insider and above, which will allow you to see what I am doing behind the scene